Happy Monday, y'all. Welcome to another edition of Reezy Scorecard. Today, we're breaking down one of the most controversial fights of all time, Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler. Now, I realize after watching this fight for the first time as an adult today that I've been led astray. Everything I thought I knew about this fight is wrong. I've been lied to. I was under the impression that this fight was a robbery, that Marvin Hagler deserved the decision. I grew up on boxing forums, East Side boxing scene, with those kind of boxing fans. And the general consensus, I would say, is that Hagler won the fight. And maybe less so of a general consensus is that it was a highway robbery. And that Jose Juan Guerra, who turned in a 118-110 scorecard, was almost a comically corrupt figure in boxing, which, as it turns out, my scorecard is closer to his than the other two. So let me say this. I scored about 9-3 for Sugar Ray Leonard. I gave Leonard the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the sixth, the seventh, the ninth, the 11th, and the 12th. And the only rounds I scored for Hagler were the 5th, the 8th, and the 10th. Now, we'll break down the scorecard one by one, but let's look at the fight as a whole. I thought Leonard in almost every round did just enough to win. And there was, there's that thing that I think started from Hagler's camp, that Leonard won the last 30 seconds of every round and stole it in the minds of the judges. I think is the opposite. I think Hagler came on strong at the end of the rounds, and, who knows how these narratives get started, but I think it was a convincing victory. And I feel like I've been lied to my whole life as a boxing fan. And I can't believe this is my first time watching the fight as an adult. But I feel betrayed. I feel wronged. And it's just an example of why you have to watch everything for yourself. Because I think I've been loosely following the narrative my whole life, where if somebody told me Hagler won the fight, I would have believed them. I would have nodded along with the general consensus. So forgetting all that, putting that aside, let's break it down round by round. Round one, I did score for Sugar Ray Leonard, and I have this one as a close round. It's a close round because neither man did much. Leonard did a lot of dancing. He's going to do more of that throughout the fight. But the few flurries he did throw were enough to take it. So at this point, 10-9 Leonard. Round two, I scored for Leonard, and I marked this one as clear. So Leonard circled around the ring, and he got off first every time he darted back inside. So he'd be circling, and then he'd dart, and he'd get inside, he'd throw a punch, and then he would hold Hagler, and Hagler couldn't do anything. By the time Hagler was trying to do something, the referee was trying to break it up. So at this point, 2018, 2-0 for Sugar Ray Leonard. So round three, I also scored that one for Sugar Ray. I listed this one as close. Hagler did come out aggressive. He won the exchanges early. Leonard won the exchanges late. And I think the difference on this is that Hagler landed single punches when he was dominating the early part of the round, and Leonard was landing combinations when he was dominating the second half of the round. I will say in this round, Leonard moved so much that it almost starts to look more like running, just outright running, than strategic moving, darting in and out. There were some bad looks from Leonard in that round, but I still give him the round. Round four, I have this one as a clear Leonard round. I don't see how you could see it any other way. He landed some huge right hands from the outside. Of course, he stifled Hagler's best work by holding every time they got close. So it was just a little more dominant version of what we had seen in the previous round. Round five, I gave to Hagler, but I have this one listed as extremely close because I wanted to give the round to Leonard for the work in the first 2 minutes. I mean, in the first 2 minutes, round five, he was doing the same thing he did in round three and round four. He was picking his shots, and when he picked his shots, he was landing. But I would say in the last 30 seconds, we'll try to put a video up with this. In the last 30 seconds, Hagler lands a huge, it's a short punch, but it's impactful, a huge short right hand uppercut. And Leonard's clearly hurt. He goes back to the ropes. Hagler's, follow-up game is nothing special, but in that round, but of course he had already hurt him. And I think at that point, you'd much rather be Hagler in that round. So after five, that's 49-46 for Sugar Ray. Round 6, I have it for Leonard. Close round. Hagler again. He has his moments for sure, but he looked amateurish, swinging at Leonard. Leonard's ducking a lot of his punches, and the crowd. You don't hear the crowd oohing and ahhing at defense often, but I mean, some of them that Hagler's missing so bad, you almost hear the crowd laughing, just because he's missing them so bad. And so Leonard's not doing anything special these 3 minutes. But he's steady with his combinations the whole 3 minutes. And I think Hagler had his moments at the beginning of the round, I would say the first minute of the round, and then the last 15 seconds of the round. And that goes again to, I really think it was Hagler that was on this, flurry in the last 30 seconds. Let's try to convince the judges type thing more than it was Leonard. So after 6, 59-55 for Sugar Ray. Round 7, another Leonard round. A close round for sure. Leonard did more for more of the round. And this one, if you listen to, if you've ever seen this fight, I assume you've seen it on YouTube. And if you've seen it on YouTube, it looks like the top video is from Top Rank Boxing. So you're hearing the same announcers I'm hearing. And almost this whole round, they're kind of proclaiming that Leonard's punches aren't doing much. Almost every time he throws them, they're saying, there's nothing on him. There's nothing on him. Hagler's shots are more impactful, but they look like scoring shots to me. Maybe of these 3 or 4 punch combos, 1 or 2 of them aren't getting in, but I'm seeing some of them getting in, touching the head. If it's hitting up here, I'm still counting some of those as scoring shots. They look like they're bothering Hagler. So I would say round 7 is close, but another Leonard round. Round 8 is the only Hagler round that I listed as a clear round. So I gave Hagler 3 rounds, 5, 8, and 10, I believe. Yeah, 5, 8, and 10. And I have listed 5 and 10 as extremely close. 8 is the only one I thought was a clear Hagler round. And let me stop here and just kind of talk about what some of my misconceptions with the fight were. So obviously at first, going into the fight, from everything I had heard, I thought this fight was a massive robbery, or at very least, Hagler deserved to win it 7-5, something along those lines. So watching it, I was kind of waiting for the fight to start fulfilling the narratives I have for it in my head. So I'm seeing Leonard stack up 1, 2, first, second, third round, and I'm waiting for Hagler to make his move to even up the fight. So, the narrative can start working itself out in my head, and it never happens. But when I see how clearly he won round 8, I started to think, okay, and I wrote it at the top of my notepad, Canelo Triple G2. So I started thinking, okay, it's one of those things where, Canelo wins the early rounds and he wins them clear. And now Hagler is going to storm back and win the last 5 rounds. So it's going to be a draw type situation, but enough there in the late rounds for him, to claim robbery for the rest of his life. Of course, I think that was, what was coming from him, that it was a robbery. So when he won this round, I wrote down Canelo Triple G2, just kind of thinking, okay, I wonder if it's going to play out like that. But after this round, and I'll tell you why I had him winning this round clear. For the first time in the fight, he's consistently busy. He's finding the range on everything. He landed at least 3 really stiff right-handed jabs after he had switched back to southpaw. And I mean, those are good jabs. Those are, I love a good jab, and you could see Leonard blinking from those. They're snapping his head back a little. And Hagler landed at least 3 of them, and they started setting up the left hooks to the body. Again, if you're watching the YouTube, the Top Rank version of it, you can hear the announcers calling for the body shots. In round 8, he's definitely landing the body shots. So coming into round 9, because at this point I have it 6-2 for Leonard, 78-74. Coming into round 9, I'm thinking we're gonna get a Triple G Canelo type thing. Hagler's gonna win 9, he's gonna win 10, he's gonna win 11. There'll be another close one in there. But then I score round 9 for Leonard, and I do have it marked as close because Hagler, he hurt Leonard at least once this round, but Leonard got the best in most of their exchanges. So Hagler hurts Leonard in this round. I don't have the exact timestamp on that. We'll try to put it up here with this. But Leonard wins almost every exchange, and he's making Hagler miss so badly at times that you start to look at the times he hurts Leonard as one-offs, because most of the time he's finding air. This is another round where if you watch it, it's a defensive masterclass from Leonard, paired with Hagler looking really bad. And we'll get more into this in round 12, but he looks really tired. He looks really slow. And Leonard's just making him miss everything. And sometimes he's not even blocking or, moving left and right. He's just putting his head back and making Hagler miss. So after 9, I have it 7-2 Leonard. And then going into round 10, I know you're not supposed to do this, but I actually watched this round twice. This is the last round I gave to Hagler, and I sympathize with the judges here because obviously they can't go back and watch it twice. I watched it once and I scored it for Leonard, but then I started to remember Hagler did some great stuff early on in the round, and I didn't want to discredit that. And I thought maybe, with all this technology around me, I could maybe have got distracted. So I watched it a second time. I scored it for Hagler. I listed it as extremely close. I wanted to give the round to Leonard. His style in this fight is stylistically just so much nicer compared to Hagler. Leonard's throwing these beautiful flurries, even in this round. The announcers are saying not many of them are landing, but they look nice. Hagler is plodding along. You could tell his arms are tired. He doesn't look great. But the last minute of the round, he starts to find a comfortable home for that straight left hand. The last minute of the round, he's starting to touch Leonard with that shot regularly. And you just have to say Leonard was clearly better in the middle of the round. Hagler came out throwing combos, aggressive. He comes out for most of the later rounds aggressive. Leonard establishes his combination punching in the middle. But then at the end, especially the last 30 seconds, Hagler is landing that straight left hand, and he's finding a home for it pretty regularly. So I scored that one for Hagler, extremely close. At this point, I have it 7-3. That's the last round I give to Hagler for the rest of the fight. Round 11, I scored for Leonard clear. It's another one. Hagler comes out aggressive. He's aggressive throughout. But if you watch it, Leonard lands all the consequential shots, and almost every time they have an exchange in round 11, Leonard wins. This is the one I wrote the smallest amount of notes for because it's just so cut and dry. Leonard clearly won that round. So going into round 12, of course, I have it 8-3 for Sugar Ray. And I gave this one to Leonard. And it's crazy because he almost tried to give this round away. You could tell he thinks he's got it in the bag. He's circling, he's dancing. But Hagler is so tired and so slow, and his arms are so heavy at this point that Leonard almost, just says, screw it. Well, what the hell? And just starts peppering him with combinations. And especially in the middle of the round, he's landing those combinations. And so I hated to do it because I almost had it penciled in for Hagler in my head. And that's another thing with the narrative. I think I'm going to give it to Hagler. I end up scoring it for Leonard. And so at the end, I score it 9-3 for Sugar Ray Leonard, 117-111. And like I said at the top, this is just a perfect example of why you actually have to watch things for yourself, especially in boxing. Every major boxer since the 1980s, and of course before that, we just don't know them as well, have their little fandoms, and their fandoms can, spread the narratives. And so I grew up thinking this fight was something of a robbery. Everything I knew about this fight was wrong. It's a complete myth that this fight was a robbery. It's a close but clear decision, but it's closer to Leonard schooling Hagler than it is to Hagler winning close in my mind. So my perceptions were all wrong, and I think the guy who really gets a bad rap here is Jose Juan Guerra, who was one of the judges for the fight, and who everything I can read in contemporary press clippings from back then was almost, derided as cartoonishly corrupt or inept, that he had just gotten it completely wrong. But with me having the fight at 117, 111, and him having it at 118, 110, and I also had two extremely close rounds for Hagler. So, had I given both of those to Leonard, I would have had it 119, 109, 11-1 for Leonard. I think it was a thorough, clear decision for Sugar Ray Leonard, and it blew my mind. So like and subscribe. Tune in next week. We're going to look at Muhammad Ali versus Ken Norton III, a fight I've never seen before, and I'm looking forward to scoring it.